From the St. Francis Yacht Club in San Francisco, this is the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, hosted by Ron Young.
Welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, live from the virtual grill room of the St. Francis Yacht Club. Our speaker today was born in Bangkok, Thailand, to a mother and father who would each serve in the Peace Corps. She started racing at the age of 8 in a small lake near Virginia. And as he tells the story, he was the last boat in every race for the first several years of his life. He said it wasn't just that he was last. He said when he would finally get ashore, everybody had put away their boats and they were laughing a little bit at how far behind the fleet he was. But he would go on to command some of the biggest ships around the world. En route to that path, he would go on to get a Bachelor of Science degree in marine geology from Southampton University on Long Island Sound and spend a whole summer at sea on the Spirit of Massachusetts, sailing from Boston to the Dominican Republic. With the world opening up in the wake of COVID-19, the backlog of maritime science projects at sea is large and growing, and the number of vessels appropriately sized and equipped to handle such a backlog of work is minimal. Our speaker today is developing a scalable fleet of small oceanographic research vessels to meet that need. He founded Greenwater Marine Sciences Offshore. He knows all about fundraising and mustering the people and resources needed to live out his dream. Mark, tell us, why did you start Greenwater Marine Sciences Offshore?
Well, one, thanks, Ron, very much for having me on here today. This is great. I can't wait till we can do this in person. Why did I start? So let me roll back a little bit. And you got the far back history of me. But then I joined the NOAA Commissioned Officer Corps 22 years ago, which is a uniform service. So it's actually active duty military. So I was in uniform and served on vessels, mostly around the country, but the world also. Everybody knows NOAA. You got the Weather Service, and you got National Marine Fisheries Service and National Marine Sanctuaries, and everybody uses the NOAA charts. But there's a small branch of NOAA that is this active duty group, and we primarily drive the big research vessels and fly the planes, Hurricane Hunters being the most famous of the NOAA Corps billets. So I started this 20 years ago as a young ensign on a ship out of Pascagoula, Mississippi. And we're a 225-foot research vessel, the NOAA ship Gordon Gunter. We did all sorts of cool work. We chased lots of whales around the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. We did a lot of fishery science, trawls, harmful algal blooms, dive operations, really cool stuff. And I'll get into more of that later. The seed was planted for me then, 20 years ago. We did a project chasing sperm whales. Gulf of Mexico. Good fun, launch the boat, put tags on them, take pictures, all the basic fun stuff. And so we were out for about a month. When we got back in, the scientists that got the funding for that project, due to multiple reasons, hierarchy mostly, wasn't the chief scientist on that cruise. She didn't get to call the shots when we were out there. So she's on the boat and we're hanging out, and she is not happy. She's like, we did not do what needed to be done. I had certain things that needed to be done and we didn't complete them. I'm like, man, you know what? I've taken this 38-foot sailboat over those exact same waters, literally just a few months before this. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, like this is all you need. And she wasn't kidding. She was like, yeah, how much, Mark? I'll charter your boat to go do that work. I'm like, wait a minute, time out. You didn't need a 225-foot ship burning 2,000 gallons a day with 25 crew members. We're talking ship operators, not including the scientists. All you needed was a 38-foot sailboat. She's like, yeah, I just needed like 3 scientists, go out, take some pictures, some biopsies. That's really it. I'm like, what the hell? So the seed was planted at that time that perhaps there was a better way to do these operations. So we did a study through the small boat program of all the scientists that submitted proposals for those 17,000 days and said, could your work be done on a 100-foot or smaller vessel? And 7,000 of those days came back saying yes. 7,000 of 17,000 could be done on a 100-foot or smaller vessel. And we didn't have very many of those whatsoever.
So what is this boat you're on right now? This looks like a schooner. What is it?
Yeah, that was my first tall ship when I think I was about, 5 years old in Booth Bay Harbor, Maine. And I think this is where I got the bug. Started sailing on the lake soon thereafter that and haven't really stopped since. That's my ships.
So you're doing research on these big 200-foot vessels, and she says we can do half all the research on 35 footers.
Yeah, well, not half, but there's definitely a need for smaller, more efficient vessels to get out there, you know. And these vessels cost anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 a day to operate or charter these boats. And so, you know, there's got to be a better way, a little more efficient way of doing things. So if you start getting down into the smaller sizes of a 100-foot or less vessel, you know, I don't need a crew of 25. I need a crew of 5, and that includes a cook, right? I don't need to burn 2,000 gallons of fuel a day. I can burn somewhere around 200, and if I include sailboats, I'm getting down to 10. And it doesn't need to be a 200-foot ship. It can be a lot smaller, and it's a lot cheaper and more efficient to maintain and dry dock and all the requirements of keeping care of a vessel. So having command of one of these ships, you know, in the Northeast, New England, we were doing lots of work. I'm in close to shore all the time, and I'm putting something in the water. You know, the operations we do with something the size of the table that I'm leaning on right now, or a lamp post, right? This is not big equipment. And most of the time I'd be close to shore. I could almost see the glow from the lights from shore. And then I'd see a little like 21-foot whaler go by me. And I'm like, what? Why do I have this big ship out here doing this work? So that kind of later in my career kind of put the nail in the coffin for me. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to start this company, going to get a fleet of intermediate sized vessels, small ships, you know, big boats, vessels that are capable of crossing an ocean, water makers, launch 2 Zodiacs, good sized ribs. So now I'm acquiring expeditionary yachts, and we're going to convert them is step 1. And you know, these are vessels that can cross an ocean, right? These are not small things. And then convert them for oceanographic science. They're super efficient, don't burn a lot of fuel, and off we go to work, doing a lot of the work that's on the screen. We could chase marine mammals, we could do plankton tows, plastic.
Upper left, what are you showing us with that blue barrel with a bunch of little anchovy-like fish in it? What's the research aspect of that?
Fishery stock assessments. So yeah, that top left is fishery stock assessments. We collect, again, not big nets, right? Little nets, tow them and pull up that and the scientists can take all the information they need. Oh, that's chasing whales. That's the fun, sexy stuff. Primarily take photos, right? That is the basic, simple thing they do most often. They identify the whales, and then they'll also take biopsies where you shoot them with a dart and take a little skin sample and pull that in. So that's what they're doing on this vessel. So we did a lot of testing equipment, and again, on a big, huge ship, testing this little stuff, right? So I think that's a current meter and equipment that you put around a reef just to get samples of whatever's going on there, the plankton or the coral spawning or whatever it is. Look at that equipment. That was on a 209-foot ship.
So the lower left-hand image, that's a diver underneath a ship? What's that?
Correct. Yeah, that's me actually underneath the ship. Bongos, those are referred to, and you'll send that down. You move slow through the water, about a half a knot, and send that down a few hundred meters, depending on your depth and what you're looking for. And then it comes back up and gets a full column, water column sample of the plankton and microplastics also. Again, the 17,000 sea days requested of the NOAA fleet. The numbers are fairly similar for the university fleet, UNOLS it's referred to. Navy and other government agencies, all shortage of research vessels. They're just not out there. And the ones they have are really expensive to operate. Schmidt Ocean Institutes, I've actually talked to them. They same type numbers. They get 90 requests a year for a project, and they fulfill 13 to 15 of them. It's like, okay, well, you know, the ones you can't do, we could do for really, really cheap. For like the price of their fuel for their big new ship, the Falcor 2, you know, we could probably knock off another 10 surveys.
So your argument is to do research for NOAA and universities and the Navy and other oceanographic institutes, you can provide smaller ships by half size, and the cost is going to be 1/4 or less than 1/4 of the cost of using giant oceanographic research vessels.
That is it. And so, like, one of my favorite new data points, I'm going back a couple slides here, but so NOAA just got funded for 2 new research vessels, and each one of those vessels is costing about $170 million, $170 million each of them, times 2.
What size are they?
So they'll be about 230, 250 feet in length. So a little bit bigger than these guys, but generally they'll be very similar to that.
And what's the beam and what's the draft? Give us some more metrics.
Oh, well, so these guys right here that were showing had a 20-foot draft and actually had a centerboard goes down to 30 feet. So normally 20-foot draft. So
And the centerboard stabilizes the lateral roll of the boat?
not really. It actually gets the acoustic package. So all your sonars and fish finders and multi-beam sonars and all that equipment away from the hull and away from bubbles and ship noise. So you get a cleaner signal for science. $170 million times two, and there's a lot I could do with that kind of money at a much more efficient level. In fact, I'll go to this next slide here. We're acquiring vessels first. That's step one with the company. But second step is to develop, design, and build our own vessels. So we're looking at something similar to these vessels right here, and we're looking at about an 80-foot catamaran, diesel electric hybrid, solar augmented, right? So we could get that fuel consumption way down. But a boat like this is about $4 million to build. That boat is 82 foot length and 36 beam. And it's very beefy. It's literally across the Pacific Ocean. And so we've started a design process, and we'll probably be modeling it after that vessel. That's about a 60-foot catamaran. And so that's actually a yacht that is being built now. They haven't delivered the first one, but it's mostly solar powered. I mean, they'll have diesel backup. And I've actually talked to them about making a more commercial research vessel, and less yachty.
So how fast will that kind of aqua colored catamaran go?
I don't know top speed. I am keeping everything around 10 or 11 knots for fuel efficiency purposes. I know the Whitehall on the left can go 20 knots.
You don't need to go fast for research. That's one of the benefits of what you're saying. You don't need to go fast. You can go slow for the research, and you're saying that you have a lower carbon footprint, and you can be more efficient from purchase, operation, maintenance, etc., with smaller craft.
Looking at this vessel on the left, that can go 20 knots, right? So that increases your capabilities of getting out of the way of storms, being humanitarian aid response. So we can kind of be the first vessel there if we have a fleet of these guys around the world. So there's a lot of benefit to having that speed capability, but you don't want to use it all the time because it burns all your fuel. And we don't want to burn a lot of fuel. We're trying to get that way down. Back to that original point of two $170 million ships, I could build 85 of these and flood the entire research community with vessels and get every scientist in the world out doing their science, whatever it is, fishery science, harmful algal blooms, chasing whales, dive operations for coral reefs and biological diversity collapse, all that. So that's kind of the vision, is not going big and complicated. I drove those ships. They're really important. We got to have them. But a lot of the work is near shore with smaller equipment, like majority of the work. And so why not make cheaper, more efficient vessels? All my vessels were acoustically quieted. Like, I don't need to spend $30 million to acoustically quiet these vessels. If I need an acoustically quieted vessel, I just get a sailboat and use that instead. The next slide is the operations we have going now in Ukraine. So as we build up the company, we're doing a lot of other work already. So right now we have a project going on in Ukraine. Top left picture there is water sampling in a river near Mykolaiv. And so we have this project to test drinking water. Started on the rivers, was the research vessel connection. And now it's turned into more of testing drinking water for all war-affected areas in Ukraine. There's me in the middle with my gear in Kyiv at our warehouse a few months ago. We're partnered with a number of humanitarian aid groups that are delivering aid, evacuating people in most of Ukraine. Just imagine going to your sink and turning on the faucet and nothing comes out. Like, great, okay. And now imagine that for months at a time, and nobody's delivering bottled water to you. What are you going to do? And that's kind of what's happening in Ukraine right now. So
what are you guys doing to help them?
So we have a group of 40 Ukrainian professionals. There's actually a professional society of water treatment and testing professionals in Ukraine with 300 members. And so we have 40 of them that are ready to go with other NGOs that have truck drivers that are evacuating people and taking humanitarian supplies all the way up to the front line, like literally the last mile. So we've brought in some portable laboratories and now distributing to the professionals there, and then get them closer to the front line, and then leverage all those Ukrainian truck drivers that are delivering aid to go to a water source in a village, take a sample of it, bring it back to one of these portable laboratories. We test it, send the information back to a ArcGIS program where we can track, where their water's coming from. Is it from a puddle? Is it
Wait, GIS, what does GIS mean?
A map, a Google map type setup, right? And so you could see where their water's coming from. Again, is it a puddle? Is it a creek? Is it an old well? And then is it good, bad, or ugly? And then how's best to treat it? And then we distribute that information to the other NGOs so they can start addressing the problems systematically. Because right now there's just huge swaths of the country that don't have any good, clean drinking water. It's a major problem. And get worse as we get into the winter.
I keep thinking of Ukraine as being a land-based war with not that much coastline. How is it that you, who are a maritime scientist and sophisticated master mariner, how are you guys helping out? What is your connection to helping this land-based, war?
Well, the project started for testing river waters. So, they're up against the Black Sea. It is an ocean-going country. There's tons of Ukrainian mariners out in the whole world. And so it's huge rivers connecting to the Black Sea. So the original plan with that red zodiac in the bottom there is to go up the rivers and identify clean water and get away from the Black Sea to fresh enough water where you could tap that into the water mains and start pumping water into whole regions. But right now there's no water, and it'd be much better to have river water that you could boil and do something with and cook and do what you need to do. Well, right now I'm working with a couple of other NGOs to do a mission to Henderson Island in the Pitcairn Islands. And so we're looking at going out there to do a plastic beach pickup out there, but it's one of the most remote islands in the world, UNESCO World Heritage Site. So we have a potential vessel in Tahiti that we'd take over there. And one of the major problems was it's very difficult to get off and on this island, especially the windward side where all the plastics are. You have to literally go to the leeward side, climb up a 100-foot cliff, go through dense jungle, and then down a 100-foot cliff and pick up your plastics. So one of the ideas we have right now is a heavy lift drone, and that's what that thing in the upper right is. So that is a big drone carrying a generator. So the idea is that we'll use that to ferry the plastics from the beach, and the drone will land out there, and you hook on a bag full of plastics. It'll take off, hover over the workboat, drop the plastics into the workboat, and then go right back.
So how big is that drone in? Is there a person in it, or is it pure drone?
Pure drone, and it has it could carry 150 pounds.
So in other words, somebody on the ground in the polluted site calls the drone to them. They put a cargo of junk, plastic, bad stuff in the drone, send the drone back to the collection boat offshore, and go back and forth with an inexpensive drone. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's the plan, because you can't take a boat through there, because like that red Zodiac down below would flip right over. Projects working right now with the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary program, evaluating their small boat program. Again, from earlier, I established the NOAA small boat program, going down there and doing some work with them. And they're the type of group that would use GMSO research vessels also, because nobody, most of these groups don't want to maintain a big vessel. They want to use one for a few months out of the year. So it is one of the vessels from the National Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary.
The message in these images is that you can use your small boat model to do research projects in a variety of venues, literally around the world, for more cost-efficient budgets than using giant research vessels or giant rescue vessels.
Yeah, it gives you the flexibility, and as a corporation, it gives me lots of flexibility. I can literally buy a boat somewhere and put it to work right away. As opposed to the government, where it takes you a decade once you decide you want a boat, and then a decade later it shows up. So
Okay.
very, very nimble and able to do all sorts of other stuff. And when the boat's, again, not doing research, we could do humanitarian aid. We could do other things with these vessels. And again, if you got a fleet of vessels around the world, there's just a lot of good you could do with them, even when it's not doing oceanographic research.
So who would contact you to be supportive? What kind of support do you need? You need investors, you need mariners, you need yacht designers, you need yacht builders. Who do you want to contact you guys with your mission here?
Yeah, so right now we've done a crowdfund recently, so we got enough money to get the first boat, maybe 2 vessels up and running. We are looking for about $2 million in investments. $2 million will get about 6 vessels around the country up and running. And so when you think about that, that's about an increase of 12% of the U.S. capability, research vessel capabilities for a $2 million investment. At which point then it could grow on its own from there. So that's primary right now, right? Fundraising, always fundraising. Second is vessel loans. So, I'm working with Small Business Administration for the collateral-backed loans of the vessels themselves. But I know there's lots of people out there that may not want to invest and take that risk, but a lower risk of backing these loans would be a lot more nimble. Like for example, the boat in Tahiti, the Small Business Administration would not fund back that one. So okay, now I got to figure out how to do that. And then again, lower down payments, with what I got right now, if I have a 5 or 10% down payment, I can get 4 boats up and running. If it's a 20% down payment, then I can get 1 or 2 boats up and running. So those are the 2 key hangups right now. We're actually identified a number of boats. I was just in the UK and Netherlands looking at 2 boats a couple of weeks ago, and a few more. And so we're getting those up and running, but to grow, we need a little bit more.
Okay, so these investors, are they looking for an economic return? Are you floating an equity fundraising, or is this a convertible debt? What kind of structure is the money people put in?
Equity fundraising right now. So again, we just did a large community round, crowdfund, and that went well. That was great. But right now, it's just everything's negotiable at this point.
What's the pre-money valuation of your round?
10 million.
10 million pre-money. Okay. And you raised how much?
$250,000.
Much of the maritime nearshore research that universities, NOAA, and oceanographic institutes conduct can be managed and administered with smaller 80 to 150 foot vessels that cost less than a fourth to purchase and maintain and operate than the giant couple 100-foot oceanographic research vessels that are traditionally used by these institutions. And you've started a private enterprise, and you're raising money for investors who would hope to get an economic return, but who also kind of have a little bit of a green orientation, it sounds like, to do this kind of research. We also get to see what it is that a guy who grew up with 2 parents in the Peace Corps and who served in the Peace Corps himself might do for a business as he grows up, what a master commander might do for a business after he gets out of the service. Thanks very much, Mark, for showing us your innovative plan. We wish you the best of luck, and thanks for being our guest on the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.
All right. Thanks, Ron, so much. It was absolutely wonderful.
This has been a presentation of the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.